Aloha and welcome to another exciting episode of the Haider Rifaat Show Season 8 specials. I'm your host Haider Rifaat, and joining me today in the Hawaii State Capitol is Senator Glenn Wakai, who has been serving District 15 since 2011. He also serves on various committees, and one of the committees that he serves on is the Economic Development Committee, which seeks to increase economic opportunities in the state of Hawaii. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing in today's episode. Senator Wakai, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So I was doing my research on you. You had this passion for journalism, and you have been serving as a journalist for many years in the past. But what sparked your interest in public service particularly?
So I spent 7 years in television news in Guam, Saipan, and in Hawaii. And what changed things were back in 2002. This changed everything, mobility. As a journalist before that time, people would wait to 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock and listen to whatever I had worked on for that particular day. But with the advent of mobility and real-time information, anybody with a phone all of a sudden became a journalist. And I thought, this is going to dilute the value of journalism. And I just thought it was time for me to do something else. And also, as a journalist, things that go wrong make the news. Things that go right don't make the news, right? When no one cares about all the planes that land safely at Honolulu International. They're waiting for that one catastrophic crash, and then that becomes news. So I was kind of tired of being a downer, which is kind of what a journalist sometimes is on the nightly news, and wanted to do something much more positive. So it was just time for me in 2002 to leave the excitement of running and chasing newsmakers around and try to become somebody who's actually making a difference in the state of Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. That's really impressive. And you have been serving the District 15 since 2011. So what have you done in the past and currently to help the economic growth of Hawaii?
I'm helping with reshaping tourism so that there's more local impact. We embraced about 10.5 million visitors in 2019. Mm-hmm. COVID decimated that. But back in 2019, with those 10 million visitors, people were talking about over-tourism. So I helped lead the effort to try and figure out how we're going to better manage tourism. We don't mind people coming here, but when they're in our neighborhoods and in trails that they shouldn't be on, then they become a burdensome problem. So now we're looking at how to manage tourism better in the future. And I'm a really big fan of looking at your strengths. And in Hawaii, we often cry about our isolation as a negative. It's called the price of paradise. Everything's more expensive, from eggs to housing, and wah. We always cry about that. I mean, unless Madame Pele connects us through the volcano to California, we're always going to have this problem.
Right.
So why don't we look at our strengths? And from an economic diversification standpoint, I look at aerospace, aquaculture, and alternative energy. I call it the AAA economic plan, where Hawaii should and can be global leaders in all three of those areas. I'm really pushing that agenda forward to help diversify us from tourism, which is about 19% of the entire state's economy.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I feel like tourism is a big part of the Hawaii's economy, and it contributes vastly towards its growth. But if we take tourism particularly out of the equation, what other areas are benefiting Hawaii's economy?
The second biggest factor in our gross domestic product is real estate. So there's a lot of land transactions. You're seeing all these luxury condos coming up. So it's actually, people think it's the federal government, with the military's presence here. It's not. It's the second biggest sector of our economy is real estate development. Thirdly is federal government. And so we don't have anything else to diversify the economy. It's tourism, real estate, people outside buying lands here, and then the federal government. There's no other thing that we do in Hawaii that creates economic vitality here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was also doing my research, and according to the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization and other sources, Hawaii's economy will be suffering because 3.1% inflation rate is expected this year, and also there's a shrinking job market. And a lot of people are also, I think there was also the cost of living in Honolulu alone is 88% higher than the national average. So considering these challenges, what is your plan to address these challenges in your capacity as a senator, and what do you think is the way forward?
There's two things that have to be done. We have to lower the cost of living, and we have to increase people's salary, because right now these lines are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Our pay is lower than the national average, and the cost of living, as you mentioned, is the highest in the nation. And so we have to take care of housing issues. That's a big factor. Inflation hurts all of us here. But going back to the other part of the equation of how do we raise salaries here? For tourism, and we've been at it with tourism for about 50 years, it's a service-oriented industry, right? They're low-paying jobs. When your future job capacity depends on what the union is going to help negotiate for you, that's a bad economy. I'm a believer that, that in the past, it was agriculture that brought many immigrants to Hawaii to work in sugarcane and pineapple. And then with the advent of commercial airlines in the 1950s, that's when all of a sudden Hawaii became a tourist mecca. So traditionally, for the past 100 plus years, it's been this muscle that has driven the economy. And I'm a believer that this muscle has immense opportunities. Therefore, going back to the triple A's, aquaculture, aerospace, and alternative energy, those three sectors have the element of technology to really hasten and really provide us the quality jobs that we want, not changing bed sheets, not serving Mai Tais to tourists. That is not a future opportunity to all of a sudden start making these lines start crossing instead of one going here and the other going in the opposite direction.
So, Senator Wakai, the aquaculture, you were mentioning that. So, do you think tourism affects that negatively, especially when we have so many people from the mainland and also internationally visiting Hawaii? So, how does that affect aquaculture?
Yeah, so aquaculture isn't just about wild caught fish. We don't want to deplete our ocean resources, but I'm talking about having a more engineered approach to food sustainability by looking at the ocean for geoposition pens. You can grow moi, you can grow smaller fish. You can't grow tuna and pelagic fish that go all over the place, but you can for a fish about this size, maybe 3 or 4 pounds, you can grow in a geoposition pen offshore. And native Hawaiians were really good at fish ponds as well. So we should play to our strengths, the immense opportunities with the ocean and Hawaii's past successes with fish ponds, and not only rely on terrestrial come out of the ground agriculture as a means in which to provide food sustainability and better jobs. We really should be looking to the ocean and the opportunities in the ocean for giving us food as well as better jobs.
And very lastly, towards the end, what do you plan to do differently to shape or redesign the economic structure in Hawaii? What gives you that edge?
I don't know if we have an edge. I think we have a lot of inertia in Hawaii state government. So I've been at this, trying to push the AAA economic plan for at least 5-6 years, and I've gotten very little traction. So for example, the Department of Agriculture in the state of Hawaii has 315 employees. 3 are dedicated to the ocean. Less than 1% of our entire Department of Agriculture is focused on the ocean. So last year was able to get 7, so we doubled it. So now, wow, it's almost 2% of the entire workforce there. But I really think that we should, in government, put our resources where they have the most opportunity for growth and not be stuck with this nostalgic pineapple and sugar mentality to feed us, and really position people to go into looking at the ocean as a place for opportunity. And if you don't mind if I talk about the other 2 briefly,
Sure.
Aerospace. Hawaii has the best set of telescopes on the planet. In addition to that, I think that one day man is going to colonize another planet. And the best terrain for lunar kind of practice it is on the big island of Hawaii, where you have an active volcano that's creating the Earth, and it really mirrors the terrain of Mars as well as the Moon. Hawaii should really be capturing that as a spot for looking at how man is going to go beyond this planet in the future. And because of Hawaii's proximity closest to the equator, state closest to the equator, we're the best spot for launching satellites into orbit, right? Because a lot of launches depend on fuel. And if we're moving faster, we can get that centrifugal force to be our friend to launch satellites into space. And the satellites of the future are small, so you don't have to have a vertical launch Cape Canaveral with the plume. You could just send a drone up there and jettison off the satellite in the stratosphere. So Hawaii really should take advantage of its position where it is with the best set of telescopes near the equator to really own aerospace development in the future. And the last area I was mentioning was alternative energy, and we have. Hawaii is the only state in America that burns oil for its electricity. That's why our electricity costs are 3 times the national average, actually higher than 3 times the national average. On the mainland, you pay 12 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. In Hawaii, it's 42 cents because, again, we burn oil. So there's a real concerted effort in going to do more solar. We have some wind here, but solar and wind take land, and as we talked about earlier, land is a very little, it's not plentiful here. So we really need to look at other means of energy subsistence. And I look at the fact that we have an active volcano and geothermal. We should be harnessing the power of the heated earth below us here in Hawaii, and then use geothermal to go to hydrogen, and then we can use hydrogen as finally an export product out of Hawaii for energy. So we have some really strong strengths here in Hawaii. We just don't take advantage of them. We just go back to tourism, look at the tropical waves and the trees, and then that's all we can do. We can do so much better.
Senator, I was going to conclude, but I think we have some more time. I want to ask you this particularly. There was this report a few weeks ago that I was reading that foreigners are kind of taking over land here in Hawaii, and that's kind of bothering the native Hawaiians because it's their land. So do you think that is adding to economic growth, but at the same time is also harming the native Hawaiian, the space that native Hawaiian consider to be their own?
I think that's a tough question to answer because one of the beauty and strengths of Hawaii is its welcoming nature. I mean,
right.
Ikomo mai, right, which means welcome in Hawaii, in Hawaiian. So we want people to come here, but then there's some in our community that say, come here, but leave. I'm not of that mindset. I think that if you want to come from Pakistan, you want to come from Norway, you want to come from Kenya and live in Hawaii, we should welcome you. By the same token, I think that we have designated lands specifically for native Hawaiians. On the mainland, they have Indian reservations, and here we call it homestead lands. So we have dedicated parcels of lands for native Hawaiians. Now, how the state goes about putting in the infrastructure to make those lands livable, that's another issue. But I don't really buy into the idea that somehow only Hawaiians and someone who's been here for centuries can live here. I think this is a place that should welcome all people from across the globe.
Thank you so much, Senator. It was a pleasure talking to you and having this conversation with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. That is all for now. Stay tuned for more on my official YouTube channel and Facebook page. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Aloha.